The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has the unenviable task of following what many consider to be one of the greatest games in recent memory. When it launched in 2017, Breath of the Wild revolutionized the long-standing franchise formula in innumerable ways, giving players the biggest world the series.
네, 안녕하세요. 진킹입니다. 자, 오늘은 방금 전에 새로운 정보가 떴습니다, 여러분들. 자, 이번에 보시는 게 좋을 것 같아요. 새로운 것들이 너무 많아서 저도 봐야 돼요. 자, 같이 봅시다, 여러분들.
The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has
자, 오른쪽 하단에 보시면 좌표가 있죠. 마이너스하고 플러스가 따로 있어요. 천 단위로 그렇게 나오니까 그래서 이번에 새로운 정보를 보면 좀 신기한 것들이 많이 보일 거예요.
has the unenviable task of following what many consider to be one of the greatest games in recent memory. When it launched in 2000,
야, 이거 뭐야? 야, 우리 4개 알고 있는 거하고 더 있는데 잠깐만. 이거 뭐야? 5시 뭐야? 이거 뭐야? 손이 3개야? 아무튼
2017, Breath of the Wild revolutionized the long-standing franchise formula in innumerable ways, giving players the biggest world the series has ever featured and mechanics that allowed them.
잠깐만. 그러니까 내가 이게 통과할 때는 내가 내려가냐 올라가냐의 선택에 따라 몬스터가 움직이지 않는다고? 타이밍 이거 뭐지? 왜 타이밍 멈추는 거지?
To experiment with the game's physics. After spending more than an hour playing some early moments of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, the answer to how this game plans on following such a tough act is a bit clearer. One of the first pieces of concrete information players had on Tears of the Kingdom was the existence of the Sky Islands. These floating landmasses serve as new areas to explore, housing new secrets to uncover and fresh enemies to encounter. These, along with various new caves, give more content to arguably the best part of Breath of the Wild, the exploration. However, after my time with Tears of the Kingdom, that's no longer the most exciting part of this anticipated sequel for me. Make no mistake, I'm still exuberant about the prospects of more enticing
나 뭐 잘못 본 것 같은데. 저 뭔가 잘못 본 것 같은데. 로켓에다가 이게 이렇게 날아간다고?
exploration in an expanded post-Calamity Hyrule, but after going hands-on with the title, it's Link's new abilities that have me champing at the bit for more time with this game. My time, which was mostly spent exploring the various Sky Islands, let me barely scratch the surface of what the mechanics like Fuse, Ascend, Recall, and Ultra Hand will allow players to do as they adventure through the world in Tears of the Kingdom.
이거 미쳤는데. 야, 이거 나 예상 못했다 이거.
Before I get a controller in my hands, I watch a brief gameplay demo from a member of Nintendo Treehouse. I immediately recognized the area from the gameplay demo by series producer Eiji Aonuma a few weeks ago. Once again, the demonstrator is tasked with building a boat out of the 3 logs to cross a river. Using Link's Ultra Hand ability, he does just that. However, he initially attaches one of the logs incorrectly. It's no problem. By shaking the right stick back and forth, you can undo the last Ultra Hand attachment that you made. Once he has the logs arranged the way he wants, he places them in the lake, and I get ready for a familiar sight. However, to my surprise, this demoer doesn't use the nearby fans. Instead, he goes into a menu, which is quick access using the D-pad, and selects from a list of Zonai devices.
야, 천천히 봐야 돼. 잠깐만, 이거 천천히 봐야 돼. 슬로우 모션 좀 봐도 될까요, 여러분들? 죄송해요. 나 이거 신기하다. 뭔가 재밌는 거 봤는데.
Quick access using the D-pad.
이거 뭐야? 17이라고 쓰여져 있는 게 뭐야, 이거? 이거 신기하네. 이것도 뭐야? 썬데리온? 스카이슈룸? 하늘 버섯? 하늘 버섯도 있다고 하네.
And so
이것도 저장할 수 있다고? 이것도 저장할 수 있구나. 주머니에. 오케이. 오케이, 이젠 다시 일반 속도로 볼게요.
from a list of Zonai devices. In this menu, I spot the fans we saw before, as well as a portable pot, which is a single-use item that can be deployed whenever you want to cook a meal. The demoer portable pot, which is a
요리장을 잠깐만, 여러분들 요리장을 들고 다닐 수 있대요. 대신에 일회용이래요. 야, 이젠 우리 어디서나 요리할 수 있구나. 야, 이거 개선했네 좀. 요리대를 들고 다닐 수 있다니.
single-use item that can be deployed whenever you want to cook a meal. The demoer finally lands on the Zonai device he was looking for, a rocket. Using the L button, he brings up a radio menu which houses all of Link's abilities, and he selects Ultra Hand. He attaches the rockets to the boat and whacks one with Link's weapon. This activates all the Zonai devices attached to the vehicle, in this case, 2 rockets. The rockets pack a lot more punch and are a bit less even than the fans that we saw in Aonuma's demo, and the force sends the boat soaring over the river. As the rocket runs its course, an energy bar appears near the bottom of the screen. This is a new resource, a secondary stamina bar focused specifically on Zonai devices. For devices like rockets, which burn out after a short burst, you don't have to worry about remembering to deactivate them. However, for Zonai devices like the fans, which have a much longer lifespan, you could easily use up all your energy if you don't hit them again to turn them off once you're done. In the trailers, we've seen Link use recall on a fallen rock and ride up to the sky, as well as ascend to reach an island that floats above him. In this instance, I battle through a Bokoblin camp en route to the Sky Islands. While my swordplay is a bit rusty, it's been a couple years since my last Breath of the Wild playthrough, I can hold my own. However, things get a little bit easier when I start remembering to use Link's new abilities. That is perhaps my biggest takeaway from my time with Tears of the Kingdom. This game is going to require me to rewire my brain when it comes to every facet of this title, whether it be exploration, puzzle solving, or combat. Initially, I reverted to my strategies used in Breath of the Wild, and while they sometimes worked out okay, it's clear that there is an easier way when you embrace the new abilities. My time with Tears of the Kingdom was filled with, "Oh wait, I know what to do," moments as the new mechanics began feeling like second nature. In this Bokoblin camp, a Moblin spots me and hurls an explosive barrel my way. Then, before I can even react, a giant spiked ball rolls me over.
야, 이거 뭐야? 잠깐만요. 천천히 볼게요, 이거.
Barrel my way. Then, before I can even react,
야, 보커볼린이 갑옷을 입고 있어. 볼린도 갑옷 입고 있어. 오, 황당하네. 이거 진짜 황당하네.
giant spiked ball rolls me over, knocking out my remaining hearts and triggering a game over. After some somber reflection on the loading screen, I think about what I could have done differently. Sure, I could have used stealth or dodged the explosive barrel, but what about using some of Link's new abilities?
야, 독이 있네요. 독 자체가 있네요.
I decide to be stealthy to a point, then launch an all-out offensive using the new
해령 맞아요.
tools at my disposal. This time, I get within throwing distance of the Moblin, and then wait for him to spot me. He
해령 하니까 서로 싸운대요.
once again tosses the barrel my way, but I freeze time with recall, select the airborne barrel, then pull the old return to sender. The barrel flies back towards him and explodes, not only hitting him, but also the surrounding explosive barrels, which also blow up, throwing the moblin off the ledge. Thinking the situation is under control, I storm the gates of the camp, only to realize there are a ton of bokoblins in there waiting for me. Not only the gates of the camp, only to realize... Thinking the situation is under control, I storm the...
추추 젤리를 던진다고? 잠깐만, 이거 뭐지? 추추 젤리까지 우리가 던질 수 있다고?
The gates of the camp, only to realize there are a ton of bokoblins in there waiting for me. Not only that, but they're being riled up by a massive bokoblin with a horn. I relocate some of the explosive barrels using Ultra Hand and fuse a flame property onto my arrows to try and thin the herd, but it's just not enough, and I decide to live to fight another day. I use a new way to get to the Sky Islands, which was housed within the bokoblin camp, and before I know it, I'm paragliding to the starting point of the challenge Nintendo issued. I notice a natural progression I could take to get to the designated island, so I start island hopping. The first landmass features a box that is suspended in midair. The Zonai design seemed to explain why it doesn't obey standard gravity rules, but I decide to use the floating box to my advantage. By using Ultra Hand, I attach 2 of the rockets from my inventory and blast as close as I can to the next island. To get the rockets aimed in the right direction, I need to rotate them, which is done using the D-pad. Doing so feels slightly finicky, but I rarely had too difficult of a time getting things just right. Soon, I arrive on an island with 2 large concrete slabs separating 2 pools of water. I lift the slab with Ultra Hand, draining the water, but it falls back down once I release it. Using a nearby log, I hastily try to connect the 2 with Ultra Hand, but it breaks the attachment. I think the weight of the slab is just too much. However, by using Recall, I can lift the slab back up for long enough that I can position the log in such a way that the weight is evenly distributed and the Ultra Hand connection holds. This drains the pool and allows me to access a treasure chest at the bottom of the reservoir. To get to the next island, I'll need to build something, but my time is starting to get a little short. Thankfully, Tears of the Kingdom includes a streamlined way to build with Ultra Hand, but unfortunately that's all I can say about it during this preview. I build a glider with fans attached, but my placement was just a little off, and the glider spins out of control almost immediately, sending Link falling off the island. Thankfully, I opened his paraglider just in time to reach the wall of that Sky Island. I climbed back to the top of the island and tried again. This failure made me realize the joys of experimentation, and even failure, that will take place in Tears of the Kingdom. I can already tell I am going to accidentally kill Link in so many spectacular ways, and I cannot wait to see the videos of everyone else's creations, successes, and failures. In fact, that was one of my favorite parts of my time.
오케이, 이젠 조금 바뀌었네요. 아이템 보는 게 조금 바뀌었구나.
With Tears of the Kingdom, the comparing of notes. There was a handful of other media members on hand for my demo session, and while the switch loads were swapped out between sessions, we all compared notes of how we approached different puzzles. While some of us took similar approaches, others succeeded using completely different methods and strategies. If a demo this closed off spawns this much discussion and room for experimentation, what's going to happen when millions upon millions of players are let loose into the open world of Hyrule? Those water...
야, 감사합니다. 야, 나 이런 게 필요했었어. 메뉴 리스트. 감사합니다. 야, 메뉴 리스트 이렇게 보여준 거라도 감사해야 돼. 씨. 이야, 씨, 나 이거 맨날 이거 헷갈릴 때가 있었는데 이거를 볼 수 있구나. 야, 이렇게 야, 보기 편하네 이젠.
Cooler moments may very well come to define Tears of the Kingdom. As I make my approach to the destination Nintendo gave me, I am greeted by one final puzzle, which involves using Ultra Hand to manipulate a smaller mechanism to rotate a large platform. You can do this using gyro controls, but I opted to use the D-pad the same way you would when positioning a Zonai device to attach to a vehicle. Using a combination of Ultra Hand movements and the recall ability, I get the platform to rotate in such a way that brings me to the final island, which gives me a key item needed to unlock a new area. I can't go into any more detail right now, but suffice it to say, there's a lot about Tears of the Kingdom that we still don't know. Leaving my hands-on demo, I'm equal parts excited and intimidated by what The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom brings to the table. On one hand, I cannot wait to see just how clever and nearly game-breaking we can get using these various mechanics. It's truly amazing to see Nintendo react to the community's creativity in Breath of the Wild with a sequel that leans into how players use the mechanics in ways they probably never even thought of. In giving players even more tools and just as many new problems to solve, Nintendo is showing it's not afraid of letting players loose in a massive open world with perhaps the most open-ended mechanics it has ever implemented. Still, there's a part of me that has a familiar sense of worry that my brain won't keep up. It's a similar feeling to what I had when I first fired up Portal 2, another one of my favorite games of all time. Tears of the Kingdom brings a similar sense of brain-breaking innovation, even in the early hours I experienced. I can't tell you how many times I looked at something with bewilderment, only to think of a new way to use Recall, Ascend, Fuse, or Ultra Hand to create new interactions. There may somehow be even more Eureka moments in Tears of the Kingdom than there were in Breath of the Wild, and that's remarkable to even think about. The Legend of Zelda
뽑기 뭔지 알겠다. 뽑기 뭔지 알겠다. 뽑기 통해서 저희가 아이템 구하는 거예요. 저희가 아까 전에 레시피 중에서 이거 있잖아요. 이거 뽑기예요. 이거예요. 뽑기 하는 것들이 이것도예요. 보니까. 괜찮네. 우리가 돈으로 사면서 이렇게 하는 건 제작 도구. 맞아. 그러니까 이거 제작할 수 있는 도구들이 거기서 가차하면서 하는 거예요. 모양이 똑같네.
how clever and nearly game-breaking we can get using these various mechanics. Open-ended mechanics I had when I experienced a new way to use Recall, Ascend, Fuse, or Ultra Hand to create new interactions. There may somehow be even more Eureka moments in Tears of the Kingdom than there were in Breath of the Wild, and that's remarkable to even think about. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom feels like a true evolution of one of the most beloved games of the century, and this demo didn't even touch on the story and featured only minimal combat. I'm excited to learn more about how all these elements work in concert. May 12th cannot get here soon enough. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click the like button and subscribe to our channel for looks at all the hottest new releases. You can also hear more about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and every other major Nintendo release through the All Things Nintendo podcast, which I host. It's available on all major podcast platforms with a new episode hitting each Friday. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you next time.
야, 미쳤다. 야, 미쳤는데요? 신기한 것들 많네요, 여러분들. 한번 다시 처음부터 볼까요? 저는 아무 말 안 할게요. 그냥 처음부터 끝까지 보세요, 여러분들.
The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has the unenviable task of following what many consider to be one of the greatest games in recent memory. When it launched in 2017, Breath of the Wild revolutionized the long-standing franchise formula in innumerable ways, giving players the biggest world the series has ever featured and mechanics that allowed them to experiment with the game's physics. After spending more than an hour playing some early moments of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, the answer to how this game plans on following such a tough act is a bit clearer. One of the first pieces of concrete information players had on Tears of the Kingdom was the existence of the Sky Islands. These floating landmasses serve as new areas to explore, housing new secrets to uncover and fresh enemies to encounter. These, along with various new caves, give more content to arguably the best part of Breath of the Wild, the exploration. However, after my time with Tears of the Kingdom, that's no longer the most exciting part of this anticipated sequel for me. Make no mistake, I'm still exuberant about the prospects of more enticing exploration in an expanded post-Calamity Hyrule, but after going hands-on with the title, it's Link's new abilities that have me champing at the bit for more time with this game. My time, which was mostly spent exploring the various Sky Islands, let me barely scratch the surface of what the mechanics like Fuse, Ascend, Recall, and Ultra Hand will allow players to do as they adventure through the world in Tears of the Kingdom. Before I get a controller in my hands, I watch a brief gameplay demo from a member of Nintendo Treehouse. I immediately recognized the area from the gameplay demo by series producer Eiji Aonuma a few weeks ago. Once again, the demonstrator is tasked with building a boat out of the 3 logs to cross a river. Using Link's Ultra Hand ability, he does just that. However, he initially attaches one of the logs incorrectly. It's no problem. By shaking the right stick back and forth, you can undo the last Ultra Hand attachment that you made. Once he has the logs arranged the way he wants, he places them in the lake, and I get ready for a familiar sight. However, to my surprise, this demoer doesn't use the nearby fans. Instead, he goes into a menu, which is quick access using the D-pad, and selects from a list of Zonai devices. In this menu, I spot the fans we saw before, as well as a portable pot, which is a single-use item that can be deployed whenever you want to cook a meal. The demoer finally lands on the Zonai device he was looking for, a rocket. Using the L button, he brings up a radio menu which houses all of Link's abilities, and he selects Ultra Hand. He attaches the rockets to the boat and whacks one with Link's weapon. This activates all the Zonai devices attached to the vehicle, in this case, 2 rockets. The rockets pack a lot more punch and are a bit less even than the fans that we saw in Aonuma's demo, and the force sends the boat soaring over the river. As the rocket runs its course, an energy bar appears near the bottom of the screen. This is a new resource, a secondary stamina bar focused specifically on Zonai devices. For devices like rockets, which burn out after a short burst, you don't have to worry about remembering to deactivate them. However, for Zonai devices like the fans, which have a much longer lifespan, you could easily use up all your energy if you don't hit them again to turn them off once you're done. In the trailer,
자, 다른 영상을 보여드릴게요. 다른 영상이요.
ゼルダの伝説 Tears of the Kingdom をプレイする貴重な機会を得たので、その感想をお届けしよう。本作が実に膨大なスケールのゲームであり、驚くほどの遊びや発見に満ちていることは、ゼルダの伝説 Tears of the Kingdom をプレイする貴重な機会を得たので、その感想をお届けしよう。本作が実に膨大なスケールのゲームであり、驚くほどの遊びや発見に満ちていることは、もはや誰も驚かないだろう。最も巨大で最も奥深く、さらに最も達成感の得られるオープンワールドの一つであるゼルダの伝説ブレスオブザワイルドの続編なのだから。Tears of the Kingdom をプレイして何より私を驚かせたのは、そうしたボリュームよりも本作におけるクリエイティブな自由度の高さだった。ブレスオブザワイルドは遠くにあるランドマークが見える、そこまで歩いて到達できるぞというのが根本的なデザインだったと思うが、 Tears of the Kingdom では遠くにあるあのランドマークに到達できる方法は100もある。その一部はうまくいかないのかもしれないが、成功した時は天才になったような気分が味わえるというゲームに思えた。今回プレイした内容の大半はハイラルの大地の上に浮かぶ空島で展開されていた。ハイラルの大地がブレスオブザワイルドのフィールドのアップデート版であるとするならば、空島での冒険は私にゼルダの伝説風のタクトを想起させた。まあもちろん喋る赤い船は登場しないのだけれど、空島は無数にあり、その間をどのように行き来し、そこでプレイヤーを待ち受ける数多くの謎やその他の問題に洞窟をどのように攻略するかが全て私に委ねられていた。頼りになるパラセールを使って滑空しながら頑張りゲージが尽きる前に到達できることを祈るというプレイスタイルもブレスオブザワイルドと同様に可能だが、今作では他にも様々な手段が用意されている。その一部は実にクレバーであり、場合によっては笑ってしまうほど面白い。例えば私は地面に落ちていたいくつかのものを寄せ集め、滑稽な2枚重ねになった戦闘機を作り、それで空を飛ぶことにした。なぜ2枚重ねにしたのかって、かっこいいと思ったからというのが唯一の理由だが、本作においてはそれで十分な時も多い。 リンクはいくつか素晴らしい新アビリティが使えるようになっており、ウルトラハンドはその中でも特に重要だ。ウルトラハンドはマグネキャッチをリミックスしたようなもので、スターウォーズにおけるフォースの力のように物体を押したり引っ張ったり回転させたりすることができ、他の物体にくっつけることもできる。動物や敵といった生き物に対しては使えないし、切り株や岩といった地面に固定されているものに対しても使えない。私の作った2枚重ねの戦闘機に話を戻そう。私は好都合なことにそこら中に落ちていた2つの扇風機のようなものをくっつけ、インベントリーにあったゾナウ族の操縦デバイスを取り出し、別の空島へ移動した。ゾナウ族のデバイスは巨大なガチャガチャの筐体のようなものからゲットできるようになっており、世界各地に用意されている。ゾナウ族のデバイスはそれぞれ見た目や性能が異なり、周囲のオブジェクトや持っているアイテムを操作したり強化したりできる。もちろんこうした能力は謎解きや戦闘においても実に役に立ちそうだ。ウルトラハンドで何かを作る作業は最初は少し厄介に思えたが、じっくりプレイしていけば慣れて自然に行えるようになるだろう。ブレス・オブ・ザ・ワイルドの操作系も他のオープンワールドと比較すると少し特殊で、ティアーズ・オブ・ザ・キングダムはさらにインタラクティブなシステムをいくつも取り入れている。今作でも誤って口笛を吹いて馬を呼んでしまうことになるだろう。残念ながら空島から読んでも馬が空を飛んでくるわけではない。誰かエポナにジェットパックをやれ。ウルトラハンドで作った乗り物やその他のからくりは幸い保存できるようになっており、必要な素材が揃っていればいつでも召喚できるので、同じようなものを何度も作り直すことにはならない。2つの物体をくっつけた後に非常にバカなアイディアであったことに気づかれることも出てくるだろう。例えば気球に横から扇風機をくっつけても何の役にも立たない。もっと頑張れ、俺の脳みそ。本作における試行錯誤の積み重ねはオープンワールドの中で解かなければならない大型のパズルを例に挙げると特に分かりやすい。あるパズルでは光る石をマップのマーカーで示された場所へ戻さなければならなかった。だがそれは別の空島にあり、島と島の裂け目を乗り越える必要があった。私は勇敢にもウルトラハンドやスクラビルドに時間を巻き戻す戻れ子といった新アビリティを駆使して、上昇気流やパラセールを利用して、とにかく様々な手を使ってなんとか石を運ぼうとしたが、その全ては虚しく失敗に終わった。そこである回転装置をウルトラハンドで動かせることにやっとのことで気がつき、空島をつなぐ道が簡単に作れることが分かった。俺の脳みそ、マジでもうちょい頑張って。今作はとにかく試行錯誤を繰り返すことになるゲームで、それもあってかトラベルメダリオンという新しいツールが用意されている。青いシンボルになっており、プレイヤーはどこでも好きなところに配置することでいつでもその場所へ戻れるようになる。難しい場面では挑む前にトラベルメダリオンを配置しておけば直前からリトライできるようになるわけだ。必要がなくなった時にマップから外してまた別の場所に配置することも可能だ。ブレス・オブ・ザ・ワイルドもチェックポイントが優しめに設定されているゲームだったが、今作ではプレイヤーの好きな地点をどこでもチェックポイントにできるというわけだ。スクラビルドも実に楽しい新アビリティだ。スクラビルドではフィールドで見つけた様々な物体や素材、あるいはすでに持っていたアイテムを組み合わせて盾や武器、それから弓矢にもつけることができる。私は強敵に苦戦を強いられていたが、そこでトゲ鉄球を見つけた。最初はウルトラハンドを使ってブレス・オブ・ザ・ワイルドのマグネキャッチでもできたように敵にぶつけようとしたが、そこでスクラビルドを思い出した。弱い剣に強力なトゲ鉄球をくっつけて強化させるのは楽しいことだし、武器の耐性も上がる。同じ武器にひたすら新しい何かをくっつけていけば、理論上はずっと同じ武器を使い続けることも可能のはずだ。そういう意味でスクラビルドはブレス・オブ・ザ・ワイルドの武器が壊れてしまうシステムが苦手だったユーザーにとっても嬉しいアビリティだろう。武器が壊れるという賛否両論のあったゲームデザインそのものは健在だが、それを避ける手段が膨大に増えたことは間違いないし、新しいタイプの武器を無限に作れるようになった。私がプレイした範囲は全てフレームレートが安定していた。ブレス・オブ・ザ・ワイルドは任天堂スイッチのローンチタイトルで、コログの森といった密度の濃いエリアではフレームレートが低下していた。ファンの多くは続編が任天堂スイッチプロのようなよりパワフルなハードウェアとともに発売することを予想していたが、そうはならなかった。私のプレイした部分の大半は空島が舞台だったので、ハイラルの大地でリンクが密度の高い森のようなエリアでたくさんの敵と戦えばどうなるかが気になるところだ。いずれにしてもブレス・オブ・ザ・ワイルドのパフォーマンスがそこまで気にならなかったユーザーにとっては今作も大丈夫そうだ。 直接の続編というゼルダの伝説シリーズにおいては珍しい位置づけにある Tears of the Kingdom。 今のところ最も新鮮に感じられるのはウルトラハンドやスクラビルドといった新アビリティや無数に広がる空島である。アニメーション、オブジェクト、衣装、音に至るまでブレス・オブ・ザ・ワイルドと似ている要素はかなり多い。ブレス・オブ・ザ・ワイルドが新しい発見の喜びを主体にしたゲームであっただけに、そうした既視感が残念に思えることは否めない。とはいえ、Tears of the Kingdom は層が厚く、インタラクションの手段は一新され、よりクリエイティブになった。新しい発見や遊びも無数に待っていることだろう。その全てを自分の手で解き明かすのは今から楽しみだし、ユーザーがどのようにクリエイティブな方法で本作を攻略するかも早く見たい。Tears of the Kingdom におけるパズルや謎はどれも驚くほどたくさんの攻略法が存在するので、コミュニティが見出した千差万別な手段に驚かされることは間違いないはずだ。ブレス・オブ・ザ・ワイルドのプレイヤーは何年も前からゲームシステムの裏をかくようなことを知ってきたわけだが、Tears of the Kingdom で任天堂はそういった遊びをさらに歓迎してくれているようにも思える。それによって道中で今まで以上に試行錯誤が必要になりそうだが、それは実にエキサイティングな冒険となるだろう。
자, 다음 거 보여드릴게요.
The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom may have the highest expectations.
재밌는 사실 하나 봤네요. 퓨즈를 해제할 수 있어요. 지금 방금 전에 한 것은 destroy fused material인데 퓨즈했던 것을 해제할 수 있대요. 아니 자세가 왜 이렇지? 잠깐만 다시 볼게요. 이것만 다시 볼게요. 야 지상과 지하를 아니 지상하고 대지를 이거 따로 나눠서 맵을 만들어 놨네요. 야 이래서 나 이게 좀 마음에 든다. 이게 훨씬 낫네. 이게 훨씬 낫네 이게. 제가 이거 제일 걱정했었거든요. 어떻게 좌표를 찍을 수 있냐고. 이제 구분할 수 있다면 나는 걱정 안 해도 될 것 같은데. 화사에다가 로켓이 합체한 아니 보셨어요? 로켓하고 화사이랑 합쳐서 쏘는 거. 나 잘못 봤나 싶었어. 왜 이렇게 시끄럽나? 맞네요. 로켓 화사이네요. 미쳤어. 로켓 화사이. 보이세요? 진짜 로켓 화사이네. 나 예상 못했다 이거. 죽이고 싶다. 아씨. 여러분들 900개 또 찾아야 하나요? 여러분들 진짜 900개 찾아야 돼요 또? 해치예요? 보클린이에요. 보클린 마하는 거요. 너 보클린 아니네. 아야 이러면서 그런 거죠. 지도도 있네요. 야, 아, 참 신기하네. 야, 좀 신기하네. 폭탄 열매를 가져온 거예요. 그 뭐지 스카이워 소드에서 나왔던 그 폭탄 열매 있잖아요. 스카이워 소드 해보신 분들이라면 폭탄 열매 있을 텐데 그거를 들고 퓨즈해서 쓰니까 그렇게 하는 거죠. 참 신기하네요. 자, 마지막으로 하나부터 보죠.
Expectations put on any Nintendo game in recent years. Not only is it the latest release in the storied Zelda franchise, it's also a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, regarded by many to be one of the best games of all time. Recent trailers have revealed an emphasis on building incredible machines with a new suite of tools, a seeming nod to the network of Zelda fans who have pulled off amazing feats in Breath of the Wild. And while Nintendo is still maintaining the mystery around much of the game, our extensive hands-on with the new tools showed an incredible amount of creative problem-solving and thrilling traversal in this ambitious sequel. My hands-on demonstration was composed of two parts. First, I began with a short segment on the ground, with the simple objective of getting past some enemies and into a tower. This was mostly just for the sake of testing the waters, with the array of new tools before preparing to dive into the deep end. While the most obvious path was to go up a ramp structure through a handful of enemies, there were much easier ways, and while there were strict limitations on where I could go during the demo session, there were almost no restrictions on what I could do within the spaces provided. My first approach was the straightforward one: stride into the enemy base with my sword and challenge enemies to combat. This was destined to fail, and I knew it, not least because I'm severely out of practice in Breath of the Wild's combat, but I thought it was worthwhile to try regardless. I was handling myself fine against a Bokoblin, but his nearby Moblin friend took notice of the scuffle and came to help, and I was caught off guard. That was the end of that life. For my second attempt, I decided to use the new building tools to circumvent the enemies altogether. The Ultra Hand ability, the new marquee building tool that lets you create complex structures and machines, can grab just about anything that isn't connected to the ground, but I didn't happen to have any flying implements around me. Rather than needing to build everything from scratch each time, there is a streamlined option for summoning fully formed vehicles. So for the sake of expediency and getting to know the tools, I summoned a small, simple, but functional hot air balloon. A dragon-headed machine part faced upward into the balloon and breathed fire when struck, taking me on a straight vertical ascent. Once I had gained enough height over the enemy base, I simply hopped off the balloon and hang glided my way past them to the goal. Then I was ushered into the second, much more expansive part of the hands-on demo. This one took place in the Sky Islands, with more open-ended goals and a massive amount of space to explore. I was given an objective: try to island hop your way over to a distant floating landmass, and very few limitations. I wasn't allowed to dive back to the ground, and a few select islands were off limits, but other than that, I was just given some tools and told to explore. The same streamlined building tool was still available, and I also had access to a Zonai parts distributor that Nintendo cheerfully nicknamed the Gumball Machine. It's easy to see why, as it both looks and acts like a candy dispenser. You insert some cores, and you get a random assortment of Zonai machine components in return. The Ultra Hand can stick together anything from the world, like felled trees or rocks, along with any of the machine-like Zonai parts. Those include fans, the aforementioned fire-breathing dragon head machine, a piston that launches objects, or you, on a regular rhythm, and most entertainingly, rockets. They look and act exactly like rockets, which includes launching you into the atmosphere with massive propulsive force. There's also a control yoke Zonai part, which not only lets you steer vehicles, but also activates whatever engine type you've attached automatically. The Ultra Hand is remarkably easy to use once you get used to it. You can stick parts together in just about any configuration you can imagine, and the tool lets you snap to certain angle degrees. Since it's all physics-based, symmetry equals stability. The game understands this and gives you a little help locking, for example, a second rocket at the same angle as you place the first. It only took a few minutes of toying with the feature before I felt like I completely understood how to use it. And while my designs weren't anything too impressive, they were often perfectly functional with minimal control fussing. Sometimes the island hopping solution was obvious. A couple of fans and a flat surface can obviously be put together to make a floating platform and reach new heights, for example. Other times, I would need to summon an airplane designed to cross a longer stretch of ground. Each time I made a little progress, I was encouraged to use the travel medallion to mark my progress. This handy returning feature lets you make a one-time fast travel point anywhere in the overworld, and you can recall it remotely to make a new one. This is especially useful for challenges like the one I was presented with, to cross several islands, since I could mark my progress as I went. By far my favorite moment of the demo, though, came from seeing how these tools could be used to solve puzzles. While I enjoyed Breath of the Wild and its sandbox model, I missed the clockwork precision of the classic Zelda puzzles and their intricately tailored solutions. I enjoy the feeling of finding the correct answer, which is slightly different than simply finding a clever way to exploit a physics system. To my surprise, Tears of the Kingdom bridged that gap by presenting open-ended, physics-based puzzles, but with solutions that felt so intuitive, I still got the satisfaction of finding my own complicated but correct way. At one point, I had to cross a wide chasm to another island on my left side, with a large structure as the pivot point between the two islands. I could move the structure by manipulating and turning a small model of it with my Ultra Hand. I found I could turn the structure so that a bridge extended to me, which would let me cross the structure itself, but then there was no way to get from there to the other island. Or I could turn the bridge towards the structure, but couldn't get to it. Either way, I was stuck, and my glider wasn't enough to cross the chasm. I needed to figure out how to cross onto the structure, then move it to serve as a bridge to the next island. After some tinkering, my solution was to make use of the new recall ability, which rewinds objects to a prior state. I moved the structure into position as a bridge to the second island, then moved it back to me on the first island. I started to cross, then hit it with recall, rewinding time so that it would move backwards and become a moving platform. I felt very clever for this, but at the moment, it simply felt like the right way to solve the puzzle. I needed a moving platform, so I made one. It was only afterward that a Nintendo rep told me I could have simply flipped the entire structure upside down, and it would have just made a normal bridge. Or, I realized, I could have moved it into either of the positions and used a hot air balloon to gain some height so I could glide over. I didn't actually have to MacGyver my way into making it a moving platform at all, but I instinctively read that as the goal, and the tools were flexible enough to let me solve it that way. I had a similar experience building my own aircraft to cross the final chasm to my goal. There was a metallic structure with a divot that served as a resting place for one of the plane parts.
자, 여기서 설명하는 게 뭐였었으면 자기가 퍼즐 푸는 게 방식이 잘못됐다는 것을 알고 있지만 근데 이게 잘못됐다는 것은 아니라는 것을 보여주는 거예요. 왜냐하면 우리가 수학을 문제 풀 때는 풀이 과정이 여러 가지로 나오는 경우가 있잖아요. 이런 것처럼 풀이 과정이 여러 개 나올 수 있다. 이런 것을 퍼즐은 여러 개의 방법으로 풀 수 있다. 그런 거를 표현하려고 하는 거예요. 지금 현재는 이렇게 간단하게 할 수 있는 것인데 굳이 그럴 필요가 없었다. 다른 방법도 그렇게 할 수 있다.
Had a fin that slotted in perfectly to act as a runway. I placed two fans atop the plane, then another identical plane piece on top. For a sort of Zonai version of the Wright brothers biplane, I placed the control yoke on top, but it occurred to me that the lower deck would have been a good way to transport items across large distances. How long that distance can be, though, is an open question. The Zonai machines appeared with battery icons, like the one on your cell phone. For the purposes of the demo, I had 3 large bars of battery, which was plenty to cross the gaps needed for our island hopping excursion, but I was also pre-equipped with a very full stamina bar for climbing, so Nintendo was definitely giving the press a leg up in that regard. I suspect that, like stamina, you'll progressively unlock more battery power for your Zonai devices. If that's the case, it's hard to say just how far you'll be able to go when the game begins, and whether you can ultimately build your way up to vehicles that can cross the entire map. Upon reaching my goal, I still had a few minutes left, and decided to devote them to searching the large island for combat encounters so I could experiment with the new Fuse and other abilities. Fuse will be mostly associated with combat, but it has applications for exploring the world too. Fusing a sword with a rock certainly looks funny, and it makes your weapon more powerful and more durable, but the new DIY sledgehammer can also break open cracked walls and floors. I have to imagine there will be more applications of the Fuse ability itself unlocking secret areas. Combat is as engaging as you would expect from a sequel to Breath of the Wild, but the Fuse ability adds a new dimension of experimentation. A quick menu option lets you fuse items from your inventory to your currently equipped weapon, which I found slightly difficult to get a hang of in the heat of combat with an enemy bearing down on me. I also had to remember, for example, to switch to my bow before hitting the quick menu to try fusing something with an arrow, which led to more than a few mistakes on my part. There's definitely a learning curve, which feels like it'll make mastering combat and fusing on the fly that much more rewarding. That said, even mistakes are enjoyable, like the Ultra Hand fuses a massive toy box, and you're encouraged to try different combinations just to see what happens. I tried attaching a bomb to a sword to see if hitting something it would just blow me up, and sure enough, yes. I attached a Keith's eyeball to a stick to see if it would heat seek like the arrow if I threw it. No luck. I was told later that attaching a wing to a weapon does, however, give it more airtime. Like the Ultra Hand building tools, the sheer number of different possible combinations and applications for Fuse is mind-boggling. I was hopelessly outmatched, however, as the nearest enemy was a massive golem-like creature. Even my best attacks barely dented it, and like my earlier encounter with the moblin, I was too out of practice to stand a chance with the odds so stacked against me. But as the old saying goes, if at first you don't succeed, go back with a bomb sword and blow yourself up. I didn't win, but I was grinning the entire time. While the demo showed the massive scope and versatility in just a few small areas, it feels like I've barely scratched the surface. My demo included absolutely no story content, and I'm no closer to answering the question of whether Tears of the Kingdom will include more traditional Zelda dungeons. There's a lot of mystery left to uncover, even after receiving a much better sense of the new building tools. That mystery, like the brain-bending amount of customization and creativity that'll surely extend from these tools, will be something that players will have to explore together when the game launches on May 12th. Starting then, just like the first game, and perhaps even more so, the community of Zelda fans will get to plumb its depths together. Tears of the Kingdom looks to be Nintendo inspired by its own fans' creativity, and next month, that cycle will start all over again.
자, 됐습니다, 여러분들. 여기까지로 보고요. 생각보다 우리가 몰랐던 것들이 많긴 하는데, UI가 많이 좋아졌네요, 전체적으로요. 그래서 이번에 많이 기대되네요. 오늘 제가 바쁘지 않는 날이에요. 다행스럽게도. 지금부터 5시간 동안 시간이 있거든요. 그래서 5시간 동안은 편집할 겁니다. 이거 다 정리해서 만들어야 할 것 같아. 너무 신기해요. 정리해서 편집하겠습니다. 자, 오늘 수고 많으셨고요. 좋은 밤 되시기를 바랍니다. 네. 자, 들어가십시오, 여러분들. 참 좋은 내용들이 많네요. 자, 빠빠이.